Welcome to my channel Coach IQ. Today we do history and the lesson is nationalism in Europe. I'm doing a small part from that is the revolution of the liberals in 1848 and the Germany and Italy unification. In the year 1848, a revolution was going on. What is important is there were two groups. One was the poor, the unemployed, the starving peasants and workers. So that is one group which shows you it is a marginalized side of society. And the other hand, you had this revolution which was led by the educated middle class. So you can see the difference. So parallel, they are involved in this revolt. Now events which took place in 1848 led to what? It led to the abdication of monarch. Events that is in France I'm talking about. Abdication of the monarch. Abdication is when the king gives up his powers. Second, a republic was proclaimed. And third, very important, the republic was based on universal male suffrage. The key word is male because women were not yet given the right to vote. So universal male suffrage. In other parts of Europe where these nation states did not exist, like Germany, Italy, Austro-Hungary, both the genders, that is men and women, again of the liberal middle class, what did they do? They demanded for national unification along with constitution. That is constitutionalism with national unification. There was a lot of unrest. Now what was the demand? It was the creation of a nation state based on parliamentary principles. Which are the parliamentary principles? That is constitution, freedom of press and the freedom of association. Now in many of the German regions, associations were formed, political associations, and the members were middle class, professionals, artisans, businessmen. Artisans were the prosperous ones, and they came together in the city of Frankfurt to vote for an all-German assembly. And on 18th May 1848, 831 elected delegates, they all marched in a procession in this Frankfurt assembly. They took their place in this Frankfurt parliament. And where was this held? It was held in the church of St. Paul. Now 18th May 1848, 831. Remember the figure 8. Every way 8 comes. So that way you remember these statistics. Now they gathered in this Frankfurt parliament and they drafted a constitution for a German nation whose head would be the monarch. But the monarch would be subject to the parliament. That is, the nation state's head is the monarch. Subject to means he is under the control of the parliament. Now when these deputies offered the crown on these terms where your power is going to be controlled by the parliament, the Prussian king Frederick William IV, he rejected the crown. He did not accept it. He didn't want his powers to be controlled by somebody. And he joined the other monarchs who were opposing this assembly. Now the military and the aristocrats, they are both opposing this parliament. So the social foundation of the parliament became lesser and lesser due to the opposition of the military and the aristocrats. Now who is the most number in the parliament, in the Frankfurt parliament? It was the middle class. As I said, the key word is middle class. The middle class are not listening to the demands of the workers and the artisans. So naturally the workers and artisans also started giving lesser support. And in the end, troops were called in and this parliament had to disband. So what we understand is that in 1848 this Frankfurt Parliament, which had elected members, tried to create a unified German nation state, but it was not successful. Now, what about women? Women actively participated in this liberal movement, but giving them political rights was always on shaky grounds. It was always very, very controversial. But women did form political associations. They did founded their own newspapers, participated in demonstrations, political activities. But when this assembly was formed, it was elected, they were not given any suffrage rights, that is voting rights. And when the Frankfurt Assembly met at the Church of St. Paul, women could enter, but they had to stand in the visitors' gallery. Now, what we have realized is that revolts were going on in 1848. So, when a revolt is going on, there'll be somebody who's trying to suppress it. So, the conservative forces, they are the ones who don't like this. They want the old way of life to continue. They tried to suppress these liberal revolts, but they could not bring back the old system. And now even the monarchs were realizing there was a shift in their thinking, that if you want to break, you want to put an end to this cycle of revolution and repression. You repress, the people will revolt, again you repress. So if you want to bring an end to this, you had to give certain concessions to the liberal nationalist revolutionaries. So after 1848, the autocratic monarchies of Central Europe and Eastern Europe, they decided that certain changes have to be introduced. And remember, these were changes which had been already done before 1815 in Western Europe. So the time lag you can see, before 1815 what had been done in Western Europe was going to be done after 1848 in Central and your Eastern Europe. So your slavery, bonded labor was abolished in the Habsburg dominions and in Russia. And in 1867, the Habsburg rulers gave more autonomy to the Hungarians. Now we speak about the German unification, a very, very integral part of this lesson. After 1848, nationalism in Europe moved away from its association with, you could say, revolution. And you can see this in the way Germany and Italy was formed. The army took an important part in the unification. Now in 1848, the liberal middle class in German states came together, and they met also in the Frankfurt Parliament with the hope that from the various regions of the German Confederation, they would form a nation state based on an elected parliament. Now this process of the unification was met with opposition by who opposed? The military and the monarchy. Remember the two M's, military and the monarchy, and supported by Junkers. Junkers are the large landowners of Prussia. Now Prussia, which was a very powerful region, they decided to take over the leadership for this national unification. And Prussia's chief minister, Otto von Bismarck, he is considered to be the architect of the German unification. He took the help of the Prussian army and the bureaucracy. 3 wars were fought over a period of 7 years with Austria, Denmark and France. Remember it in the alphabetical order A, D and F. Austria, Denmark and France, and it ended with the Prussian victory. Now on 18th Jan 1871, an assembly met, that is a group met of important Prussian ministers, your important officers of the army, the bureaucrats, Otto von Bismarck himself. Where did they meet? In the unheated Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles, where Kaiser William I, who was the Prussian king, was crowned. He was proclaimed the Emperor of Germany. Now remember, in 1848, who had refused the crown? It was Frederick William IV. Now we have switched on to 1871. Who has accepted it? It is Kaiser William I. And Kaiser is actually the German word for emperor. Now he has accepted it. Now when we see the German unification, we realize that Prussia was very strong. And all these modern methods of banking, currency, the law, all this became models for this newly formed state. So the German unification was done, the army was responsible for it. So it is asked, can the army be the architect of the nation? And you see that in Germany, where Prussia took over the leadership. Now we speak about the Italy unification. Italy also, like Germany, had a history of political fragmentation. Italians were scattered over several dynastic states and the multinational Habsburg Empire. Now during the mid-19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states and only one was under an Italian princely house, that is Sardinia, Piedmont. North was under the Habsburg Empire, center was under the Pope, and the south was under the Bourbon kings of Spain. Now when we do Italy unification, you have to remember 4 names. One is Giuseppe Mazzini, one is Giuseppe Garibaldi, then you have Cavour, the chief minister, and the King Victor Emmanuel II. First we speak about Mazzini. During the 1830s, Giuseppe Mazzini really tried, to bring about a program for a unitary Italian republic. He also formed a secret society called the Young Italy for his goals. But both his revolutions, 1831 and 1848, they both failed. Now the responsibility for a united Italian state fell on the shoulders of Victor Emmanuel II, who was the king of Sardinia, Piedmont. The ruling elite of this region realized that if Italy was united, it could be very advantageous in 2 ways. One is economic development and the second is political dominance. Now Chief Minister Cavour, who was the person responsible for unifying all the regions, he was neither a revolutionary nor a democrat. In fact, he spoke French better than he spoke Italian. Now what did he do to bring about this unification? First of all, through a brilliant, tactful diplomatic alliance with France. The Sardinia Piedmont forces managed to defeat Austria. This happened in 1859. Now what happened in 1860? In 1860, Giuseppe Garibaldi. Many other volunteers joined his fray, joined what he was doing, and they marched to southern Italy and the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. They fortunately got the support of the local peasants, the local farmers, and they managed to remove the Spanish kings from there. 1861, Victor Emmanuel II was crowned the King of Italy. So you have 1859, 1860 and 1861. They all go one after another. So to remember these dates is very, very easy. I really hope this topic has become clearer. And if you have any queries, please post them in the comments below. And do like the video, share it with your friends and classmates, and subscribe to my channel to continue studying with Coach IQ.